the gates of hell, which we find in Matthew chapter 16 verse 8. And this Jesus said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Debates over the centuries arise in mainstream Christianity about this phrase. This debate is a contention between those who argue otherwise and those who believe in the ever-burning hell concept. But the centrality of the argument of those who believe in this ever-burning hell concept is premised on how that the church will prevail over the power of Satan in their daily effort in winning souls for the kingdom, so that these people, when they die, will not be transported to the gate of hell, which eventually would gain them access to this ever-burning hell torment. But is that what the scripture really says? If you have followed us for a while, you will know that I'm always insistent that one of the cardinal rules of biblical interpretation is to let the Bible interpret the Bible. So when you come to a phrase like the gates of hell, we need to stop ourselves from imagining what we think it means and do the hard work of finding out exactly what the scripture says it means. Several myths have found their way into mainstream Christianity, sadly. I always keep telling you that there's a problem, or there's a challenge we are dealing with, and that challenge is the problem of mistranslation. And this problem arose because many people come from a background of pagan origin, and as they were introduced into the faith, they do not allow themselves to grow and mature in the things of God. So they found it wise to import pagan origins and pagan doctrines into the faith and Christianize it. How pathetic. Romans chapter 1 verse 21, he says, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imagination, and their foolish heart was darkened. It is these myths or folklores that have crept into mainstream Christianity, and you will understand why. The word hell has been mistranslated in the KJV, for there are 4 different words for the word hell. We have Sheol, we have Hades. So Sheol is the Hebrew, its counterpart is the Greek, which is Hades. We have Tartaru, we have Guyana, Tartaru and Guyana. So there are 4 basic words, and each word communicates a particular intent, for which reason this has created a mistranslation problem, not a contradiction problem. So that people, instead of taking time to study to show themselves approved of God as a workman that needs not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, they jump into conclusions and depend on imaginations that are only a fiction of their own minds, and decide to Christianize it and accept it as truth. But these imaginations have no roots or basis in scripture. So this is what happened. Let's do a little bit of Greek mythology, so you better appreciate how these things have evolved over the centuries and have gradually been Christianized into the church. So that now, the word gates of hell, why is it that people associate it with a place that is ever burning, and that the place has gates where they call the gates of hell? How did this thing begin? This thing goes way back into ancient Greek mythology. Myths, sadly, are often endorsed by secular and religious authorities and are closely linked to religion and spirituality. And some of these folklores have found their way into the mainstream Christendom. And that's how pathetic it is. And one of it is the word Hades. So people could not understand or fathom that Jesus in John 5:28 said that, marvel not, do not be surprised concerning that hour, all those who are in the grave. All those who are in the grave. He didn't say all those who are burning in hell, or all those who for a brief moment are waiting in heaven. He said no, all those who are in the grave shall hear my voice, and they shall come out. All those who are good will come unto the resurrection of life, and all those who are wicked or evil will come unto the resurrection of damnation or condemnation. This is so plain. Jesus made it impossible to be misunderstood. Yet people still come up with certain imaginations which you sit and you begin to wonder how these things came into the faith. So let's do a little bit of Greek mythology to better appreciate a lot of things. I'll be doing a lot of Greek mythology so you can better understand and appreciate how these things have entered the faith. So you do a lot of Greek mythology and Roman mythology, and you begin to understand how some doctrines have explained themselves out which has no basis in scripture. From here, you need to get my book on Trinity. The Trinitarian God is God three in one, and it has roots in Greek and Roman mythology. It is not scriptural. That is why most people, there's a whole faith that argues that because God does not have a wife, God cannot have a son. How pathetic! Because these ideologies are based on Greek and Roman mythology, and it is not scriptural. But because the minute you understand the very intent and mind of God for the ages to come, nobody can even, it's a fallacy to even imagine and say that because God has no wife, he cannot have a son. This is sad. So let's do a bit of Greek mythology. The name Hades in Greek mythology is associated to the god of the dead or the king of the underworld, with which his name has become synonymous. So in Greek mythology, the word Hades has been associated to the god of the underworld or the god in charge of the realm of the dead. This is how the story goes, that Hades, he is the eldest son of the god Cronus, and his mother is Rhea. His brothers are Zeus and Poseidon, and that the legend goes that the three of them, Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon, they waged a war against their father's generation of gods called the Titans, and they prevailed over them. That the war lasted over a period of, let's say, I think 10 years according to Greek mythology. And once they prevailed over their father and his generation gods called the Titan, this is how it happened, or this is what they received, that Hades now took possession of the underworld, making him the god of the underworld. Zeus took possession of the skies, making him the god of the skies, and Poseidon took possession of the sea, making him the god of the sea. And concurrently, three of them lay claim or have authority over the earth. So the earth belongs to all three of them. That is Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon. But when it comes to exercising their authority, Hades is in charge of the underworld, Zeus is in charge of the skies, and Poseidon is in charge of the sea. So now you are beginning to draw or see the clue or the inference of how Greek mythology and Roman mythology have been Christianized into the faith. And this is how a lot of things have entered into the faith, sadly, which has no scriptural basis. So now, according to Greek mythology, there is a god in charge of the underworld. Do you understand? So now people have now Christianized this thing into the faith, because when you understand Hades and what he does ruling the underworld, they now, in Greek mythology, that there's an ever burning place, that when people who are evil or wicked or go contrary to this and this and that, they are cast into Hades, where the god in charge of the underworld takes charge of them. His name is Hades, and this is how Greek mythology was imported into the faith. Jeremiah chapter 9 verses 14, it said, but have walked after the imagination of their own heart, and after Balaam, which their fathers taught them. This is how sad these things have become. But sadly, some of these studies have found their way into mainstream Christianity. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verses 5, he said, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. I hope you are getting it. So now let's try to unravel the problem. I said it begins with a major problem, which is a mistranslation problem. But I always say that mistranslation is not a contradiction problem. Keep following. So let's make it impossible to be misunderstood. So I think now it's clear. Now, from the Greek mythology, now you begin to understand and appreciate